One of my earliest memories of childhood is hearing my family talk about the remarkable time that a white man treated me like a regular little girl, not a little black girl. It was right after World War I, around 1919. I was 5 or 6 years old. Moses Hudson, the owner of the plantation next to our lands in Pine Level, Alabama, came out of the city of Montgomery to visit and stopped by my house. Moses Hudson had his son-in-law with him, a soldier from the north. They stopped in to visit my family. We Southerns called all Northerns Yankees in those days. The Yankee soldiers patted me on the head and said I was such a cute little girl. Later that evening, my family talked about how the Yankee soldier had treated me like I was just another little girl, not a little black girl. In those days in the South, white people didn't treat little black children the same way as little white children, and old Mose Hudson was very uncomfortable about the way Yankee soldier had treated me. Grandfather said he saw old Moses Hudson's face turn red as coal of fire. Grandfather laughed and laughed. I was raised in my grandparents' house in Pine Level in Montgomery Country near Montgomery, Alabama. All my mother's people came from Pine Level. My mother's name was Leo Edwards. My father came from Evansville, Alabama. His name was James McCauley. He was a carpenter and a builder, very skilled at brick and stone masonry. He traveled all around building houses. My father's brother-in-law, Reverend Dominic, Aunt Audie's husband, was pastor of the Mount Zion African Methodist Episcopal Church in Pine Level. And it was there in Pine Level that my father met my mother, who was a teacher. They were married right there in Pine Level on April 12, 1912. My mother was 24 years old, and my father was the same age. After they were married, they moved to Tuskegee, Alabama to live. It was home of Tuskegee Institute, with Mr. Booker T. Washington had founded it back in 1881 as a school for blacks. My parents lived not far from it. Both black and white leaders called it the town of Tuskegee, a motto of good race relationships, and that may have been why my father wanted to move there. And there were a lot of building jobs in the country of Macon, Alabama. My mother got a job teaching. It wasn't long before they started a family. I was born on February 4th, 1913, in Tuskegee, and named Rosa after my maternal grandmother, Rose. My mother was around 25 years old by the time I was born, but she always said that she was unprepared to be a mother. I guess she was unhappy because my father worked on building homes in different places in the country, and she was left alone quite a bit. She had to quit teaching until after I was born, and she always talked about how unhappy she was, being an expedient mother and not knowing many people. At that time, women who were pregnant didn't get out and move around and socialize like they do now. They stayed pretty much to themselves. She said she spent a lot of time crying and weeping, wondering what she was going to do and how she was going to get along, because she wasn't used to having a child to take care of. I came along and I was a sickly child, small for my age. It was probably hard for my mother to take care of me. And my father's younger brother came to live with us, so that was someone else to cook and wash for. My Uncle Robert was a carpenter too, and he enrolled at Tuskegee Institute to take courses in carpentry and building. But my mother always said Uncle Robert knew so much about what they were trying to teach him that he was teaching the instructors. Every time they would say something about a building plan, he would say, "No, I think we should arrange it to do this way." And then they would arrange it the way he suggested, and it would come out right. He didn't stay at Tuskegee Institute very long as a student. I have pictures of the houses my father and my uncle built. Beautiful houses. They learned from their father, I think. They didn't learn anything at Tuskegee, but Tuskegee was still the best place in Alabama for African Americans to get education, and my mother wanted to stay there. Her idea was for my father to take a job at Tuskegee Institute. Teachers got houses to live in at the time, so they would have a place to stay. The other children they would have, and I would get an opportunity for an education at the Institute. At that time, black children in the South had very limited opportunities for schooling. But my father didn't go along with that idea. He wanted to do contracting work and make more money. He and my mother didn't agree on planning for the future. My father decided he didn't want to remain in Tuskegee. He wanted to go back to his family in Abebe. My mother had no choice but to go with him. So we went to Abebe to live with my father's family. It was a big family with lots of children. My grandmother had started having children early and didn't stop for a long time. When I was born, my father's youngest brother, George Gaines Macaulay, was 8 years old. He used to tell me he was jealous of me because he'd been the baby for 8 years, and he didn't like me as the new baby at all. But he liked me as I grew older. I learned all that I know about my father's family from my young Uncle George. He said that my father's family was unknown and somehow he was the one of the Yankee soldiers who served in the South during the Civil War. My father's grandmother was a slave girl and part of the Indian or something. That's all I know. If my mother knew more than that, she never told me. I guess she felt she wasn't as compatible with that family as she should have been with her in-laws. I think my mother may have done some teaching in Abebe, but she didn't stay there long. My father decided to go north, and my mother didn't want to stay with his family while he was gone. She was pregnant with my brother by then, and she decided to go back to live with her own parents, who had a small farm in Pine Level. They were all along by then. I think my mother may have done some teaching in Abebe, but she didn't stay there long. My father decided to go north. My mother didn't want to stay with his family while he was gone, and yes, I did just repeat that. She was pregnant with my brother by then, and she decided to go back and live with her own parents, who were a small farm in Pine Level. They were all alone by then. The niece that they had been raising had married and left. My mother said she thought about the house in Abebe with my father and mother and growing children, and then she thought about her own mother and father not having anybody with them. So she just up and left and went to stay with her parents. My mother took me to live with her parents in Pine Level, Alabama, when I was a toddler. Later, my father joined us, and we lived as a family until I was 2.5 years old. He left Pine Level to find work, and I did not see him again until I was 5 years old, and my brother was 3. He stayed several days and left again. I did not see my father anymore until I was an adult and married. My mother and father never got back together. They just couldn't coordinate their lives together because he wanted to travel and she wanted to be situated in a permanent home. My memories of my mother's parents are very clear. In fact, my earliest memories is my grandfather taking me to the doctor to look at my throat. I had chronic testiculosis all through my childhood, but this was very early. I wasn't more than about 2.5 because it's the only time I can remember being an only child in the house. My mother didn't go. I think she was allying. It must have been just before my brother was born. My grandfather took me to the store. There wasn't a doctor's office. Grandfather sat me up on the counter, and I remember I was wearing a little red velvet coat and bonnet. The doctor asked me to open my mouth, and I opened it. I can recall that everything the doctor asked me to do, I just obeyed very nicely. The people were amazed with my being so small and being so little troubled. I opened my mouth, and he put something in it. I thought it was a spoon or something to hold my tongue down. When grandfather took me back home, he told my mother and grandfather how well behaved I was. That's the first time I can remember anything at all about myself. I always liked to be praised about any little thing. I felt kind of happy because he thought I was such a good little girl.